Lately, I've been in need of more storage in my workshop, and I've also been in need of a router table. My last router table was a cheap inset into my old table saw, which you can actually see in the background of this shot. It's bolted to my workshop wall. Ever since upgrading to a nicer saw a few months ago, I've been meaning to build a nicer router table. I came up with this design myself. It has the router wired through a light switch to easily turn it on and off from the outside, and a 4-inch dust port which extends through a false drawer into the cavity that holds the router. The cabinet is built into the wing of the table saw, so the melamine cabinet top provides a larger work surface and also allows me to use my table saw fence directly as a router fence. The cabinet has tons of storage, and I was able to build the entire thing from one sheet of 3/4-inch plywood along with some other scrap pieces of wood around my workshop. Unfortunately, I don't have any SketchUp plans to share because I designed this with pencil and paper to fit my specific saw. If you have a saws.pcs, leave a comment down below and I'd be happy to share the measurements with you. This is a pretty involved build, so I'm breaking the video down into a few parts. In this first part, I'll walk through how I designed and built the cabinet body, including the wiring and the dust port. Let's get started. To begin building the cabinet body, I broke down a full 3/4-inch sheet of plywood into smaller pieces, first roughly with a circular saw, and then with my table saw for precise final cuts. I used a 3/4-inch dado stack to cut a number of grooves and rabbets in the pieces. These are used to join the 4 corners of the box, as well as hold a horizontal crosspiece in the center of the cabinet and 2 smaller vertical dividers. I also used a smaller dado stack, about 5/16 of an inch, to cut grooves that will hold the smaller drawers, which slide in and out on 1/4-inch plywood bases. If you're planning to build one of these for your saw, the cabinet body should end up being exactly as wide as the space between your table saw rails, and at least 1.5 inches shorter than the table saw surface, because a 3/4-inch thick melamine top along with some leveling feet will get added to the cabinet later. With the plywood pieces cut out, I also rough cut out a hole in the top, which the router will drop down through. The size of this hole isn't crucial, since the actual router plate inset will be fit into the melamine top later. This hole just has to be big enough to allow the router to fit comfortably through. To glue up the cabinet body, I used glue and a lot of brad nails. I took my time double and triple checking to make sure everything was square. A skewed cabinet body wouldn't fit into the table saw correctly, and would affect the drawer's ability to slide in and out smoothly. To make the dust collection port, I bought some metal duct material from the local hardware store. I cut it to width and rolled it around my dust collection adapter to get a good fit, then taped it together. I've been using duct tape pretty much my whole life, and this is actually the first time I've used it on a duct. I cut out the holes for the dust port and the light switch box on the outside cabinet wall, then a second hole for the dust port on the inner vertical divider. I really wish I had measured and cut these holes before gluing up the cabinet body, as the inner hole was really difficult to cut out. I ended up using a jigsaw, various drill bits, a sanding drum, and some chisels. It wasn't pretty, but it doesn't really matter much because both of these holes will be hidden anyway. I realized that the points where the cabinet will bolt into my table saw rails are right near the top, which would be impossible to get to with a wrench. I cut out some holes in the top where the bolts will stick through to help me install the cabinet into the saw. These holes end up getting covered by the melamine top anyway, so it doesn't matter. I actually ended up not bolting the cabinet to the saw at all because it was so massively heavy, so these holes are pretty much useless. I guess that's a spoiler alert, sorry. Right about now is when I googled how to splice a light switch into an extension cord. I am no electrician by any means, so I was extra careful here. I chopped a grounded extension cord in two, followed some online instructions, and installed a light switch in the middle. Now I made two really annoying mistakes here.
That was pretty simple.
First, I wired the switch up before actually installing the box into the cabinet, so I had to remove all the connections and rewire everything. Then, I wired the light switch upside down and had to do it all over again. I wired it up so that I just plugged the router into one end of the extension cord within the cabinet body and plugged the other end of the cord into the wall. I didn't want any permanent wiring because this is actually my only router, so I plan to take it in and out of the cabinet pretty frequently. To finish off the cabinet, I cut out a piece of cheap 1/4-inch plywood and fit it into the rivets along the cabinet back. The plywood I had lying around was really bent and warped, so it took a lot of brad nails to keep the board held down while the glue dried. And with that, the cabinet body was done. Stay tuned for the next episode where I'll walk you through how I made the drawers and I fit them into the cabinet. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the subscribe button below.